Do you want me to move?
We'll balance the long hair, right?
I know. Take one knee. Take what?
One knee. Bend over.
I just went into an open.
You're still short.
No, she's a Disneyland. Such a
I
tough
know.
life. How dare you leave me?
When you're looking at
I'm gonna
this,
stow
you
away.
gave me that stoic face. I'm like,
Who are we?
So there, like Liz Weebled me.
Just remember when the prime time was.
Exactly right. Playing around the chicken. Love it.
Should have worn a girdle.
slaving in the rain. Yeah.
They'll see my shiny head.
I actually.
Yeah.
Unless I can get it rescheduled.
My fiance is from, I don't know, Native Hampshire area. Yeah. So,
Got back last night.
I want to. I want to. It's the. Yeah, like we went to Texas.
The man of the hour.
and our neighbor.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I haven't looked at it.
It's somebody who won't.
Yeah, it can't. I can't currently go because I have other engagements. Unless I can fix it.
Oh, Matt's tall.
Yeah, we've done some little Matt, he's like the giant.
Negotiations and your negotiations.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no place for me to put my notes.
I
I know, it's very cute. All right. Good morning, everyone. Are we good to go? All right, thank you. So welcome, everyone. My name is Marie Nisis, and I have the honor of being the Clark County Education Association president. We're here on a historic day. I'm very excited, so I'll try to be calm as I'm going through my speech. Alongside me are members of my executive board and some members, as well as a handful of our negotiations committee educators. Many of our educators are out visiting family, out of town, so unfortunately they couldn't be here. However, I want to start first and foremost by thanking every single person that helped us get to this point. First and foremost with our educators. They were out there at every rally in the middle of the heat, in the middle of summer. This fight began back in March, and it's completely unacceptable that it took this long to get to this point. But again, we couldn't have done it without our educators. We also couldn't have done it without our community members who also participated in our rallies and were in support of this and continually felt that educators deserved a raise, as well as our students. Our students were phenomenal. If you were at the rally downtown, they spoke with true passion because at the end of the day, this is about students. This is about their education. That is what we are fighting for. We're making sure that we not only recruit the best educators, but retain our educators so that every child, regardless of zip code, has a quality teacher in front of them. And that was what was important to all of us. That was our driving force. Every time we had updates, the educators behind me continually would drop everything, get on a conference call, put in their thoughts, put in their opinions of what they were hearing from their colleagues. And it was important. It was a collective. But this process started back at the legislative session. We could not have done this without our legislators. I want to give a big heartfelt thank you to Speaker Yeager as well as Majority Leader Nicole Canizero. They were pushing for this. They were helping us, making sure that we got SB 231 accomplished, and because they know that in order to make an impact in education here in Nevada and to change the direction that we are heading, we must address our salary schedule and what happens when we get here and get into this long battle with CCSD. So to them, I thank them personally. My board thanks them. Our members thank them for their support. And then, of course, our governor, Governor Lombardo, I'd like to personally thank you because I know I've had multiple conversations with him. Our executive director had multiple conversations with him. Behind the scenes, he was helping address the issues. We asked him to come look at our proposal. We asked him, be honest, are we asking too much? Is this acceptable? Can we move the needle? Can we start moving towards your acing accountability? And he agreed that what we were asking for was very reasonable. We were not asking for more than what we knew we couldn't attain. So again, going back to March, that's when we started this process. This system is broken. We cannot continue to do this every 2 years. When our legislators put in funding, we should not have to come here and be at the mercy of whatever superintendent happens to be here. It's unacceptable. We continually, unfortunately, and heartbreakingly lose educators. As I've gone to schools week after week, and especially leading up to the winter break, I would have educators tell me, I can't hang in there anymore, Marie. I can't afford a home. I can't afford my rent. I can't afford to live here. So by December 15th, I kept pressuring John, I know it would be a Christmas miracle. Can we get this done by December 15th? Because I'm fearful of how many educators have decided to walk away. I'm hoping it's not too late for some of them with this new contract, that they will stay. This is my 31st year in the district, and I'm a 22-year veteran educator. I'm so excited about this salary schedule. I'm happy that what we were able to obtain and what we were able to achieve. We never steered past what the most important key elements were that our educators wanted, and we stuck to those. So the fact that we made full circle and got back to exactly where we started is unacceptable. We have to make a change. CCEA does not let the grass grow under their feet. So, of course, we're already moving on to the next fight. But first and foremost, for our members, the next fight is obtaining a new superintendent. Our current superintendent has negatively impacted our students. We need to do everything we can to improve this district and move the district in the right direction. So that's our first priority. And then our second priority, one of many, because we're always fighting for changes, is to change this archaic law that really was unfair to our educators. Back in 1969, they took our ability away to keep our voices heard, to make sure that we're out there fighting for a fair contract. So we plan on overturning the right to strike law. It's unfair to our educators. We've heard it loud and clear. They want a change, and we plan on doing that. But before I turn it over to our executive director, I just want to go over a little bit of what's in the plan. So right now, currently, our average, we'll take an average educator at a starting salary at a salary of $72,842. These educators will restore the PERS, so that would be an increase of $1,355 because we started the school year with a pay cut. And so that educator would get an average of 10%, is about a little over $7,200. The 2% step that they received was $1,420. A $5,000 increase on their salary if they are one of the 9,000 educators who are either SPED or at one of our high vacancy Title I schools, hard to fill positions. And then, of course, the 5,000, my eyesight, what does that say?
861.
Thank you. What happens when you're getting old? If they have a column movement as well. So we want to make sure that our educators get what they have coming to them. And of course, the other educators who maybe are not eligible for a column would get a salary increase of $8,704. So I'm excited about what we achieved. We still have a lot to fight for. We will continue to do the fighting for our educators. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to our Chief Negotiator and Executive Director, John Bellardita.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you, members of the press, for coming. My name is John Bellardita. I'm the Executive Director of the Clark County Education Association. There's two parts that I'd like to address with you today. The first part is a little more detail to the agreement that we reached. So first, context. This is a decision by the arbitrator. And under statute, when a party declares impasse, you're then on track for what's called binding arbitration. It's in the hands of the arbitrator that the parties select. The first order of business that the arbitrator did, and by the way, we went through 28 arbitrators to get to where we are today. And so the first order of business of the arbitrator is to kind of assess the situation and has the option under statute to order the parties back to the table, which this arbitrator did. And the parties are given 30 days to see whether or not they can resolve their issues. And so what took place was we began some negotiations under that directive by the arbitrator, who also mandated that only chief negotiators for both sides could be in negotiations, and they had to have the authority to make a deal if they could reach a deal. And so we began that process, and that process took place over maybe a week and a half, and we essentially reached an agreement. And part of what we tried to establish was, first and foremost, to bridge the gap. In other words, what was the difference between what we had on the table when impasse was declared and what the school district had on the table that when impasse was declared. And the range was anywhere from 70 to maybe $140 million. That was the gap. And so the agreements that we essentially reached in the end bridged that gap, right? And so there's two sources of funding, before I get into the detail of this agreement, that secures this. The first is general fund money. There's approximately about $640 million the district is going to use for this new agreement. And then the second source is SB 231 money that is supposed to be money on top of what would be negotiated with the $640 million. And that had a value of anywhere from about $115, $118 million. The total value of this agreement is north of $750 million. This has never been achieved in this school district ever in its history, the sum of money. It's $750 million. And so the way it breaks down is the following. The first order of business for us was to restore a pay cut that these teachers took at the start of the school year, beginning in July 1. They took a 1.875% pay cut, which was the equivalent of about $1,300 or more a year. So they took a pay cut, and a lot of that was missed in the narrative of this struggle, that they were starting the school year making less money than what they ended last year's school year. So that was the first order of business to achieve that. And we did achieve that. The 1.875% has been restored, and it will be effective February of 2024. So any educator that took a pay cut will receive that increase back on their salary schedule. The next thing was a 10% across the board adjustment to all educators and the salary scale, which that was accomplished in the first year, effective July 1, 2023, with retroactive pay all the way back to July 1, 2023, to be paid out in the first pay period of March 2024. Then the other COLA adjustment occurs in the second year at 8%, and that takes place in August of 2024 for those employees coming in, and the salary schedule is adjusted accordingly as well. So the 10% and the 8% came out of general fund money. In other words, there's no dispute whether or not those remain in effect when this contract ends. The next thing that we accomplished was adjusting the pay for all educators that are in Title I schools that have a 5% or more vacancy at the end of the school year. That's about 160 schools. It's about 9,000 educators that are affected by that. That's where 82% of all the vacancies are in the school district, where about 30,000 kids started the school year, will end the school year without a licensed professional. That was a high priority, as Marie had said earlier, for us to accomplish. So there was a $5,000 adjustment to their salary, their base salary, for any educator in one of those schools, and it remains as long as they remain in that school. The second area is our most neediest kids, our special need kids under special education. We negotiated a $5,000 adjustment to their base pay effective July 1, 2024, the same effective date as the hard to fill. It's in the second year of the agreement. And that's for all educators in special education, whether they are self-contained or non-self-contained. Under the guidelines of the Nevada Department of Education, they would be eligible for this. And that funding for that is not out of the general fund. It is out of SB 231 dollars. And I'll speak about the 231 in a minute. Then the next thing that we wanted to capture was increasing the salary schedule so that we could increase the top pay for educators as they continue their employment with the school district. So 2 additional columns were added to the salary schedule. And what that means is if somebody moves a column, they get anywhere from $5,600, $5,800 more every time they do that to their base pay. So what that meant then was essentially the salary schedule now, with those adjustments, the 10%, the 8% on the salary schedule and the 2 new columns, the entry level for a school district, for an employee coming into the school district will be a little over $55,000 on the first year with a top pay of a little over $131,000. And in the second year, the entry level will be around a little north of $59,000 with the top pay being over $142,000. This is unprecedented. This is the most significant salary scale advancement in the state of Nevada and is extremely competitive with the Western United States. Why do I say that? Our objective, as Marie said when we started this, was to address the vacancies, and part of it was our ability to recruit and retain. We believe that this salary schedule, as it's been adjusted through negotiations, is going to serve that purpose. But that's not all that we got. The extra time that a teacher has to pay after their 7-hour and 11-minute will be increased from its current level of $31.50 to $50 an hour for all educators, effective immediately. Our health insurance has been increased, and the district will contribute towards monthly premiums over the term of the agreement 19.7%. What does that mean? It means effectively that an educator will not have to take these raises that we've secured and then pay for any additional health care costs for premium contributions on their part. And then, of course, we also secured in our contract the annual step increase, which has about a 2% value each year, and the column increase, which has a value of about $5,700 each year, as well as differential pay for our other licensed professionals, counselors, nurses, school psychs, etc., which have a range of up to $5,600 additional pay. And then last, on top of this agreement, our coaches and club advisors' pay is going to go up. It's going to be adjusted to the new entry level, and that's a significant increase for them as well. So this agreement, as I started out, has a value of general fund money and SB 231 money of around over $750 million. Now I want to talk about SB 231 because apparently, and you know, you all have heard what the district's position on that was during this negotiations, and you've heard ours. And ours has been, from the word go, and as I stand here today, is consistent. We would not agree to any sunset provision that essentially said that the money allocated by the majority leader, the legislator, and signed by the governor for additional compensation for educators will automatically end on July 2025. So we have within the SB 231, which has to be approved by the IFC, by the way, a provision that essentially says for the hard to fill in the SPED, that the governor is going to put into his budget additional funding. The majority leader is going to renew funding for SB 231, and the speaker is going to put in a BDR to modify the pupil center funding plan to address hard-to-fill positions. And the agreement calls for, at the end of the 2025 legislative session, the parties will sit down, essentially assess the additional funding or the funding levels that the legislature land on and pass and the governor signs, And then we'll determine whether or not there's adjustments to those special ed and hard-to-fill positions upward, remain the same, or do we have to negotiate something different? When it comes to the PERS allocation that we use to restore the 1.875%, we used SB 231 dollars, about $55 million to cover that. The agreement calls for, once the PERS board has sat down and determined for the 25-27 biennium any changes in PERS contributions, the parties will immediately meet and confer and determine whether or not there's any adjustment to the PERS contribution by the employer and the employee. If there is a need for an adjustment, the parties will negotiate. If the parties can't come to an agreement on the negotiation, statute mandates that any increase is equally borne by the employer and the employee. That there is the details of the agreement. It's in effect now. The arbitration process under statute, once the arbitrator renders a decision, in which case it was this agreement, it's over. There's no going to the school board trustees for any kind of approval, nor is there any vote of ratification by the members. The deal is done, it's over, and we're moving on. That's part one of what I'd like to share with you. I'll entertain questions in a minute, but I want to speak to part two. We should never have gone through this. On March 30th, 2023, we proposed on the table everything that I just went through with you, our key demands. 9 months later, and pay cuts for 18,000 educators, with no end in sight, we reach an agreement that we never should have had to go through. So we have consistently said that this school district needs new leadership. We're firm on that. We believe that under Superintendent Jara, he's a liability to every child's education in this state, that this situation has been thoroughly mismanaged. One of the casualties of this contract dispute is not just these educators, but the students that had to go through this, and the fact that we couldn't fill vacancies where we could have possibly filled some. We lost more teachers when this semester ended than when we hired at the start of the school year, and the vacancy rate is actually higher now. All of that, we believe, is not simply just a recruit and retention challenge that the district has, but we had well over 300 plus educators quit from August through the end of December, and in part because of the struggle that we're going through. So we're determined to see new leadership at the school district level, a new administration, as well as a change in the school board trustees. There's an election coming up. Clearly, we think that the president in particular has mismanaged this situation and has unconditionally, with a blind eye, followed the direction, the misleadership of this administration. So that's one thing that we're going to be pursuing. The second thing, and I think Marie referenced it, we will be seeking legislation to change this outdated law where we have a conflict or a disagreement in a contract negotiations and we have to go through what we went through. We are very confident that there will be a change. We are going to continue our challenge before the Nevada Supreme Court that we believe we constitutionally have a right to strike, and if we do not prevail there, we will look for legislative changes, and if we cannot find legislative changes, we will and are seriously taking into consideration taking that issue before the people with a ballot initiative. We'll make that decision soon in the future, but moving forward, these are the things that we're going to pursue. And in conclusion, I would like to say this, that what we proposed to the school district back on March 30th, 2023 wasn't something random pulled out of the sky. It was something that we did in tandem with what was going up in the Nevada legislative process, with the funding that was being allocated or deliberated to be allocated and then ultimately adopted, as well as a survey by our members as to what were our key issues that we wanted to address. And the number one issue that addressed this contract this time which we believe is the most significant issue facing K through 12 in the state of Nevada, is these vacancies. And you're not going to achieve, some resolution on these vacancies unless you can address the recruit and retention issue. And that's what we strive to do. We believe we've taken a step in the right direction. With that, I'll take any questions or comments that you may have.
Mr. Villardita, I'm asking something that several veteran teachers have reached out, so I want to read. They mentioned, they said they will not get a review of their salary placement. How do you plan to address the teachers described that would have qualified for a one-time look back? It looks like some new teachers hired, if placed properly, may actually start at a higher pay rate than a veteran with equal qualifications. Can you kind of address if that's accurate, and then just what you would like to say to those teachers?
Well, I don't know if that's accurate. What I will say is I think the district initially in bargaining was really disingenuous and tried to play what I would call wedge politics and pander to educators that felt because they had more time with the district that they should receive additional pay. The district initially put a proposal on the table, but that proposal withered away as negotiations proceeded. We don't believe the district was ever serious on that. We, in fact, challenged the district on that and suggested that perhaps we do review where people are placed in the second year of the contract, and if there's any adjustment to be made on the third year out. The district declined to entertain that proposal.
Can you just describe to us, this is Joshua Chalay, you talked about the process of coming to a deal. Can you just, what was it that changed just from the impasse to now that you were able to secure a deal? Can you just talk about a little bit more of that process?
One, we think we made our case before we even had an arbitrator. Arbitrator rules based on one thing: the ability to pay, as long as it doesn't compromise the mission of the school district. The district, when they declared impasse, had enough money on the table to reach this agreement. I think there was a recognition on the part of the district, particularly their legal counsel, that the probability of them prevailing in arbitration was not great. In fact, I think if we had not reached this agreement, I think that there would have been more, possibly we would have won in arbitration. I think that's part one. Two, I think the community is fed up with what was going on. I think parents were fed up. Clearly students were fed up, at least the ones that vocalized that through their activism. And I think electeds were fed up, and I think that you all saw what the majority leader and the speaker came out, and I think business leaders were fed up. We clearly heard they wanted closure on this. And I have to echo what Maria had said in terms of the role the speaker and the majority leader played to try to help facilitate, let's bring resolution to this, as well as the governor and the extensive discussions that the governor had. And I'm not going to speak for him. He can speak for himself, but I think that was a pivotal role as well.
You talked about getting a new superintendent. Is CCA taking any steps to, I guess, attempting to make that happen?
Yes.
Are you able to share what they are?
No.
Throughout this process, I mean, I've talked to you several times, and you said you knew the money was there for this, and the district wasn't giving that, but now they all of a sudden are. What goes through your mind, and what has the reaction been from teachers knowing we had to go through this whole thing?
I didn't hear the last part.
What are teachers' reactions knowing that the money's been there and now they all of a sudden have the money?
I think people are angry. I think people are there's closure, and they're glad there's closure, and they're good with the closure, right? There will always be some folks that have a different opinion on that, but I think people are angry. I think they're disappointed. I think we started in November, December of 2022. We surveyed our members and asked them if they had confidence in Superintendent Jar leading this district with a historic investment that the state legislature was going to dump into K through 12, $2.5 billion. And overwhelmingly, 78% said they had no confidence, right? We revealed that privately with the superintendent and trustees. And we said, you got to change, because with this money that's coming in, we have to start improving kids' education. And the answer we got was not satisfactory. And so the next survey we took, was, do we think that Jara has got to go? And overwhelmingly, the numbers came back, said that he has to go. Then we took a poll. We took a poll in the spring of 2023, and we asked the community. Again, high numbers, 78% said that the superintendent should either be terminated or resign. So when you ask me how do people feel in our ranks, how do educators, I think they're even more determined to see new leadership at the school district level, and that's why we're going to pursue that.
Is there any talks, any talks in the future to move the negotiations up to not have this sort of?
So we started in March of 2023.
Yeah.
Contract ends July 1. So we started early at a time when the first budget that has to be passed at the state level is the education budget. We started early and in parallel with the development with the state budget, you know, so that we could determine how much money the school district would be getting. And I mean, it led to where we're at. So I don't think it's a question of starting early. I think there's got to be a different process to resolve a dispute, a significant dispute, right? And so here we have a process that there's just no control over it once impasse is declared and it's in the hands of an arbitrator. You don't control the calendar.
Are there any efforts to bring back those 300 plus teachers who have left from August to December?
Well, we're not actively, I mean, we just settled this contract, right? But I can tell you the one message we are sending. There are significant educators right now that were on the verge of quitting or retiring at the end of this semester, pending the result of this. So I don't know if there will be a return of those who left, as much as there may very well be progress to keep those that were thinking about leaving.
Can you talk about a little bit, you know, how this will help with recruit teachers? I mean, you know, we did a story about them flying out to Miami to try to recruit teachers. They ended up getting them. But how can this help with recruiting?
So we primarily compete with Western United States, California, Texas, Southwest, etc. I often give an example of 2014. 2014, we had over 2,000 vacancies in Clark County School District when the school year was about to begin. Our entry-level pay was $34,000, and we were competing with the Western United States for 10,000 openings, and we were at the bottom last on entry-level pay, right? So we weren't successful. In the 2015 legislative session, there was an additional $5,000 allocated for entry-level teachers to get hired. And from 2,000 openings, we went down to 500 openings the next year. So what I'm trying to share with you, there's historical evidence that when you're able to be competitive with a salary schedule, to draw people in, like this one will do, we believe firmly, it's going to enhance your ability to recruit people. Equally important, it's going to enhance your ability to keep people, because people now see over a period of time they can make additional compensation, that they'll be rewarded for their profession and their experience with the school district.
Hi, Caitlin, Review Journal. Is there any possibility that the pay raises could result in any jobs being cut? And have you gotten any assurances from the district that that won't happen?
It's not going to happen.
Can you elaborate on why?
It's not going to happen. They've got, you know, I think they got over 1,200 or 1,300 vacancies now, if you don't count 600 or 700 subs. And so the district in an arbitration proceeding has to present evidence that they have the ability to pay. The arbitrator in this case, when he rendered his decision and reviewed this agreement, had to get confirmation that the money was there to pay for this agreement without jeopardizing the mission of the school district, which is to teach kids. If you start laying off people, right, and you increase class sizes, you're putting at risk that mission.
Can we go back to SB 231? I'm not sure if I understood correctly, I'm sorry. Does that mean that the SB 231 funds will only be applied to raises for SPED teachers or teachers in Title I schools?
Correct.
And, on that note, so the provision, you said that there's going to be a provision included in the contract, kind of that says that the governor and lawmakers commit to finding additional funding and reviewing SB 231. How do you ensure that they keep their promises, you know, especially if they don't win the election?
Well, that's a good question. We can't give an absolute guarantee that especially if people lose elections, that things won't be there. But this is one thing I want to say, right? I think the district presented a false argument to the public when they said that SB 231 was one-time money and it wasn't in perpetuity, and they in contrast compared it to the pupil center funding plan and essentially said, well, that's in perpetuity. That's not correct. The budget, every legislative session that occurs has to be reviewed and approved. Nothing is guaranteed, right? And so with the pupil-centered funding plan, which is the main source of dollars that come down to school districts, that's going to be reviewed. You know, that could be increased, that can remain flat, that could decrease depending on the economy, and there would have to be adjustments made. And so we believe that the agreement that we have, where we have commitment to move either legislation or to put into a budget, is as good as we feel confident that when the 2025 legislation session ends, we'll be in a very good position to continue additional funding.
Also, it doesn't seem like other school districts are using the SB 231s the way it seems like this one is going to be used under the contract, you know, for specifically SPED and Title I teachers or teachers at certain Title I schools. Have you talked to lawmakers about whether a plan like this will be approved by the IFC?
It will be approved. And I'm not going to speak to what the needs or priorities for other school districts were as to how they used SB 231, but I will speak to one profound difference. In every one of those 16 other school districts, they agreed to automatic sunset provisions. In other words, that money ends on July 1, 2025. We did not agree to that. And we prioritized two particular areas of great need, the hard to fill and the special education, where that money should be. And we had extensive conversations with the governor and legislative leadership before we moved that proposal on SB 231 as to whether or not they would support that, and they did.
For those who are watching and are just like, what is a salary schedule, can you give kind of a brief description of what a salary schedule means and how you approach, is it off of degrees, how many years, or what does that mean?
So it's a combination of things, right? So you have people that are already placed on it. So those that are already placed on it automatically each year will be adjusted a step increase. If they embark on the professional growth salary column advancement, it's a 2 or 3 year period where they have to have additional professional development training or college degrees or et cetera. And once they complete it and they verify, they can move a column over, which is an additional $5,600. But that's a willful decision on the part. It's not an automatic. The steps are an automatic. For people that are coming in, right, which is an important question, the law got changed in 2019 that essentially said a school district cannot ask a new incoming potential employee how much money they make. So the school district has to have guidelines as to how they place people on a salary schedule. So what we've done is adjust the salary schedule that it tries to capture education levels like bachelor's degree, bachelor's plus 16 credits, master's, etc. So incoming entry level people would initially start with that kind of approach.
For the retroactive pay, I apologize if you already addressed this. Is that going to be paid out over a period of time, and so how long?
So the agreement states that in the first pay period of March 2024, going back to July 1, 2023, all eligible employees shall receive retroactive pay. They can receive it in one payment, or if the district wants to pay it over a period of more than one payment, They can do that. We've been told they're going to make it in one payment. And let me just say what the amount of that money is. On the low end, it's at least, for somebody who started at July 1, $2,500. On the high end, it could be south of $5,000. That's how much money is at play for a retroactive payment.
When will teachers start seeing a change in their salary? When will they see a reflection? And when will we start trying to add some of these new teachers to fill these spots?
So we believe that effective January 1, or I should say effective the first pay period in January, the 10% adjustment to people's base pay should take place. That by February, the additional 1.875% for their PERS, right, it should go in effect. I think it's February or March. So that's when they should see that.
And about hiring, when are we looking at trying to fill those vacancies? You had mentioned during your initial statement that you lost 300.
Yeah, well,
so when are we going to start actively looking?
Well, if they don't take trips to Miami Beach. I mean, look, the hiring period begins in the spring. School budgets by school sites are determined January, February. So this is an opportune time for the district to be able to present to applicants in this upcoming spring hiring period what the salary compensation could be. So we think it's going to have an effect, but that's how quick it could take place. Any other questions?
Coming shortly after the IFT meeting where, lawmakers chose to defer on listening to CCSD's proposal, was that part of a coordinated effort with lawmakers to, I guess, twist the district's arm into getting this agreement done now?
If we could coordinate things with lawmakers, we would have had a contract 9 months ago. Any other questions? Okay, so that concludes, and our members here are available if anybody would like to have any additional questions for them. Thank you.
Exciting day.
What?
Exciting day.
Is that all right if I tell one of the reporters something?
Absolutely. Yeah. Hi.
Me regaló una entrevista muy
Yeah.
Bueno, que me quiera dar la entrevista. Sí,
La gringa habla español.
Sí hablo español, pero no muy bien. Ya, ella no puede ser más.
And I need Spanish as well for the review journal.
Again, she speaks better.
Okay.
Right?
I'll just bring
I'm Spanglish, so I can't.
Spanglish. I'll just bring over my camera here. Yeah.
I Spanglish sometimes too.
I thought it was so good to go since I think we just